Nel 1976 pubblica Man-Made Self, il suo primo racconto di fantascienza. Oggi portano il suo nome 4 antologie di racconti, 5 saggi e 10 romanzi. Fonda insieme a William Gibson il movimento cyberpunk. Ha detto: le persone non vogliono conoscere il futuro, vogliono sapere che hanno un futuro. Bruce Sterling, 53 anni, scrittore.
There's as many methods as there are futurists. So, yeah, I know several of them. I mean, the ones I like best. I mean, you can't really tell the future just as the future, but if you're a futurist, you generally have a client. Somebody who wants to know, they have a reason to pay you to tell them. And there are some really pretty good methods for telling the client's future, or helping the client to sort out their own options and look at what's going on. And in a way, it's like psychotherapy, because generally the client has hired you as a futurist because they are confused. I mean, they're a company. If they have a future that they understand, they're busy doing it, right? So people who hire futurists are generally people who are in a tight spot of some kind. They feel like they've lost the thread. They don't know what's happening. And that usually means they have some kind of psychological block, right? So, as a futurist, you generally get groups of people together and in scenario thinking, which is really a kind of encounter therapy. And it usually works best with between 20 and 25 people. You divide them up into groups. You get them to open up, discuss some of their situations. You take them out from their normal lines of work. You break up the usual hierarchies that hold them together in the organization. You show them something they haven't seen. You get them to brainstorm. You listen very carefully. You pick out key words. You assemble them into various scenarios. You do a quadrant. You get them to flesh out various possible futures. Yeah, I mean, I have seen that work extremely well. I've also seen it be a boring waste of time. But in a lot of ways, it's like dream therapy. I mean, you don't know their future, but they know their future. But what you know that they don't know is that you're coming from outside their organization, and you can sort of refresh their thinking. Well, I think literature is in crisis, and I think print is in crisis. I think, means of expression that are based on ink on paper are in crisis. And, science fiction is rather ductile. I mean, it's in crisis to the extent that it's literature. Trend spotting and futuristic thinking and futuristic journalism are not in crisis. They're actually doing pretty well. So, I'm a journalist as well as a novelist. I like to write about the future. I mean, not all science fiction writers like to do that. A lot of them just like to write adventure stories or, write for films or television or comic books or things that aren't necessarily futurist. I don't think there's really a crisis there. I mean, I think that talking to people whose business it is to understand the future, it's grim, but I think there's a pretty good understanding of what's necessary, really. It's just we don't know how to convince the political classes to go about doing it, or whether they're even the people who ought to do it. The best innovation that makes us dream, I'd have to say web surfing. Yeah. I mean, web surfing is something that didn't exist 20 years ago, but it's really very open-ended and kind of illogical. It's kind of, I saw this site, and it linked to this site, and this site linked to this slide, and then I used my search engine, and I found this thing I never heard of, and here was this guy, and he did this video, and then I saw the video, and then I looked at the text, and then I went to his Flickr set, and I saw some photographs, and you just study what somebody does during an afternoon, and it's really like hallucinating. You know, it's like 5 or 6 different kinds of media: text, photography, video, hypertext maybe. It's not coherent in any way. It's like thumbing through encyclopedias or kind of wandering through a library. You know, and at the end of the day, you feel like you've learned something, but it's very hard to explain what you learned, right? It's like, because there's no tests, there's no quiz, you don't perform anything, you just sort of feel more educated somehow, or sort of enlightened. And yeah, I think web surfing is an addiction for stunning numbers of people. I mean, we're really in a situation right now where a lot of very creative and intelligent people just web surf all day to no particular end. They're not learning a doctorate, they're not increasing their work skills, there's no immediate payoff. They're just out there. And it's really the new cultural basis for both good and ill. Perfect. Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return you to the music of Ramon Raquello, playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Memorial